Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. Prater Oz again. I wanted to make one more video to talk a little bit more about the subject of growing OTO and growing OTO bodies. So this is specifically again in the realm of OTO. I talked in that other video about basic strategies for growing an OTO body and tried to build a little bit of an understanding of my views of how this can be accomplished. But there's a lot more to that and a lot more to my ideas and my thoughts about why OTO hasn't really grown, and I wanted to get into some of those here in this second video, okay? So I talked a lot in the other video about people who are more right-brained, you might say, rather than being the analytical, intellectual, left-brain type of people. Now, the right-brained people are more creative. They're not attracted so much to the intellectual side of Thelema, okay? But that's not to say that the intellectual side is not important. It's all about balance. And the people who are more attracted to the intellectual, in my opinion, should embrace the more creative side, the less intellectual side, in order to balance that within themselves, and vice versa. And the point of the things that I laid out in the other video was to try to find ways to get the more right-brain people to start embracing the intellectual side. You give them things to chew on. You give them things in their particular stage of development within Thelema to tease out other things that they will find interesting and therefore want to go do some intellectual work with those things, okay? But you also have to, in order to keep people around, you can't just focus on basic. You have to also have this intermediate and more advanced material and things going on to keep the intellectual people around and not feel like, from their perspective, like we're just catering to all the people who are not intellectuals. That's the best way to say it. So it is important to have those things, and I don't want people to think that I'm saying that we need to just dumb everything down all the time. I'm just saying that there has to be balance. We have to be embracing that side of Thelema, the more practical, creative side, in order to keep those people engaged. But we also have to keep the intellectuals engaged as well. Now, I tend to feel like we already do a pretty good job of that, okay? I think that sometimes the issues arise when these more advanced classes turn into a way for intellectuals to do lectures and show off their intellectual prowess, okay? And also I think that it's a problem when, like for instance, at Bubastis, we've a couple of times done this Magic Book 4 Liber ABA study group that went on for months and months, you know what I mean, and basically went through the whole book beginning to end, more or less. Now that is good for people who, for people to get involved in and follow through from beginning to end, okay? It's not so great for new people because they're going to end up jumping in the middle. They missed a bunch of stuff at the beginning, and it's more difficult for them to follow just in general, much less jumping in later on in this long series, okay? So that's just something I think you should recognize as someone who puts these types of things together, is that yes, it's good to have more sustained lecture series like this, but it's also important to realize that that's not so helpful for new people oftentimes. So you have to be providing these things that are short and repetitive and that happen over and over, But you also need to have the higher level stuff for the people who have been around for a long time. You have to have a mix of both. And that's the goal here. The goal here, I mean, you're never going to keep everybody happy all the time. But the goal is to keep everyone engaged. Now, some more ideas, just to throw a few more ideas out there. One of my ideas is to have a couple times a year to have a panel where the people who've been around a long time, the what I would call senior members of the body, sit at the front, and then everybody comes and asks them questions. Now, what this does, you could call it whatever you want, you know, what this does is it allows you to engage both, to engage the new people and the people who've been around a long time. You give the newer people the sense that they can ask their questions and get them answered by people who are experienced, and you're kind of feeding the old timers and long time members egos, even though we're supposed to be trying to eliminate our egos. You know, it feels good to be the one who's chosen to sit on the panel and answer questions. And you know, it should be something that rotates. You choose a few people to be the ones who answer the questions, and 6 months later, when you do it again, you choose different people to answer the questions. And in this way, you're engaging both of these groups, okay? And you're also building somewhat of a bond between these two, what you might say are semi-opposing personality types in your body, okay? So panel discussions, whatever you want to call it. I think you get the idea. I think that that's a good way. Also, ritual workshops, okay? Now, I want to say that in the past, I've seen a lot of ritual lectures where people break down the intellectual aspects of a ritual and, you know, dissect the words and the histories of the Chaldean oracles and all this other stuff that's very intellectual. But what I'm talking about is actual ritual workshops where you teach the new people how to perform the Star Ruby, how to perform Liber Reguli, how to perform Liber Resh, with everyone taking part, everyone getting a chance to perform the ritual if they want, to see many other people perform the ritual, to understand how and why we vibrate God names, just the basics and the actual performance aspect of this. This is something that really hooked me in the beginning when I was in San Antonio, was the ritual workshops. I learned so much from those back in the day, and it's not something that we've ever really done at Bubastis. We've had lectures since I've been here. We've had lectures about the intellectual aspects of the rituals, but not really these lab type, like you have the class portion and the lab portion. And I think that it's important to do that, to get the new people learning how to perform the rituals, learning, you know, the actual mechanics of performing rituals, and also how to read the rituals and know how to perform them. Because this is something that in the beginning was really difficult for me, because the way Crowley writes the rituals is not super straightforward sometimes. And, you know, especially with things like he makes the adorations as in Liber Legis. What the fuck does that mean to new people? You know what I mean? These things that some of us take for granted that are difficult to newcomers on a basic level are important things for us to be doing at the local body. And doing these types of things it builds a rapport. It builds a shared experience between the people who do them together, do them in front of each other, make the leap of, you know, overcoming their anxieties to do things in front of other people and stuff like that. These are great team building exercise type things, okay? And then also, you know, it says in Liber 300, which, you know, I'll harp on when it comes to these types of topics. One of the things it says is, social gatherings shall be held as often as is convenient, and there the law shall be read and explained. Okay? Now, the social gatherings, we got that on lock pretty much, you know what I mean? We're always doing some kind of social gatherings. But I wouldn't say that we ever really do the law should be read and explained part. And, you know, people talk about being the center of pestilence and not commenting on the book of the law and stuff like that. And there are ways around this. Like, you don't have to read the book of the law and explain it. Okay, you could say, for instance, during a social gathering, somebody could come up with like a portion of Liber Zodi, you know, and just talk a little bit about it. Start a discussion about it. Read the Liber while everyone is socializing and drinking and stuff. Read Liber Zodi, and then start a discussion about it. Tell people what that means to them. Some type of variation of this, you know what I mean, to keep things. All these things allow us to do what I talked about in the other video, which is to try to keep things Thelema focused. Now, I will say as an addendum to what I talked about with that in particular Enochian magic and classes on Enochian magic, and to a lesser degree Goetic theurgy, I would say that these things are not what I would really consider skirting the edges, like I talked about being distractions from Thelema, because obviously, especially in the case of Enochian magic, Crowley was very involved in it. One of our holy books, or at least part of its Class A, Liber 418, is Crowley's scrying of the Enochian ethers. And so I think that while this may seem like it's something that kind of skirts the edges, it is an integral part of Thelema, in my opinion. Okay, the John Dee and Edward Kelly are Gnostic saints, etc., etc. Okay, so just to throw that out there. So that's just a few ideas. There are lots of things, guys, that can help us to maintain a focus on Thelema and to provide lots of events without doing all the skirting the edges type stuff. Another thing is discussion groups on holy books. Now, you know, I'm sure lots of bodies do this, but this is something that I think should be a staple. You know, the ability to read a document and then have a group of people discuss what they take from it, what their meanings are. It helps us to suss out our own thoughts and maybe click some light bulbs in our heads about some things that we didn't notice before in those holy books. So, you know, I think that one's obvious. I think a lot of bodies probably already do that. But, you know, this is just ways to stay Thelema focused. Now, some further observations and I'm probably going to step on some toes with this portion of the video, and sorry, not sorry, okay? These are my thoughts, and they're also the thoughts of many other members who I've spoken to about this topic. You know, this is a topic that comes up, and that is the culture of a body, okay? And how to create this culture that is appealing to new people and wants them to stick around, and makes them want to stick around, all right? And one of my observations locally, and I know this happens in other bodies as well, is that you will have people who get invited to the higher degrees, okay? And there is this thing that happens where although these people oftentimes will preach to you about ego and all this stuff, but I have noticed a tendency for when people start to get into the invitational degrees, all of a sudden they disappear. They're not as active in the local body anymore. And to a certain degree, this is by design, because the work of the local body is supposed to be carried out by the people in the Man of Earth degrees, and then once you reach the Lover's Triad, my understanding is that you're more supposed to be about promoting harmony amongst those Man of Earth people. And so there can be this conception that, like, oh, well, I did my time and now it's time for me to focus on Lover's Triad stuff. This is, in my opinion, a mistake, okay? I have seen time and time again people who take the 5th degree and then all of a sudden they think their only job is just to come in and do these high-level, mentally masturbating lectures, okay? And that they then don't put a whole lot of work into the local body and local social events and stuff, which I believe are the things that promote harmony within the Man of Earth. And this is not the case with everybody, and I'm not talking bad about the Lover's Triad, but what I will say is that I have noticed a lot that once people get into the Lover's Triad, they get given jobs, and so it's already a lot of work just to do the local body type stuff without having extra piled on top of that. And it is my opinion, and I'm sorry if this steps on your toes, that a lot of these jobs that are given out in the Lover's Triad are useless. They're meaningless, useless jobs that mean nothing when it comes to growing OTO, supporting the local body, supporting the culture of the local body, etc. Like, in my opinion, the vast majority of these jobs that are given out do nothing but distract them from the workings of the local body. Now, I find this problematic because, it's fine, we need things done. We need things done on a higher level than the local body. I'm not just bad shit talking it, you know what I mean? There are things that need to be done, okay? But think about, and this is the difficult part. This is what I think, what I've been trying to get across, is that after you've been doing this for a long time, you tend to forget what's important to keep new people coming, to keep the culture going. And when you go off focusing on Grand Lodge jobs and focusing on all this other stuff and neglecting your obligations to the local body in the sense of, look, bottom line, okay? When new people come in, it is important for them to have these people around that have been around for a long time and that know what they're talking about and know how the order works and know about the Lima, that they can talk to and learn from just by virtue of listening to them have discussions with intermediate Thelemites, to them have discussions about random Grand Lodge stuff. It is an important part of the culture for them to see at every meeting people who have been around for a long time. You can't just have a bunch of new people and people that have been around for a couple of years recreating the culture constantly and figuring it out, learning it as they go, making shit up as they go along type of thing with a local body. There needs to be the stability of these higher members active in the day-to-day social activities, masses, classes, and the social aspect. Not just coming in to do a class and then disappearing, and then we see you next time there's a class or when you're going to perform mass. It's important for you to be engaged in the community in a real way. That's how you promote harmony among the men of Earth. You stay there as a staple of the body, as someone who those new people can look to for an example for guidance. As it stands, a lot of times the new people, they're looking to second and third degrees for guidance, and they're looking to them as an example. But the reality is that presence of fourth, KW, fifth degree, sixth degree people is important on a day-to-day or event-to-event basis. And so we need to have that as a part of the culture. We need a representation of the lower and the higher degrees. We need new people to come in and feel like, hey, there's people here that have been in the order for 20 years. You know what I mean? That, I don't know. I mean, there have been times throughout Bubastis history since I've been a member for 15 years or something, that it was like this, and then there have been times where it hasn't. And I'm not saying that it's an ongoing, constant problem. I'm just saying that there needs to be thought put into it. And I do see people who I would like to see around just for, if no other reason than I miss them, because new people need to be exposed to people that have been around for a long time. They need that experience in the culture of the body to make them feel like this is something that's lasting, that this is something that they're going to be able to do for years and years, and to see the difference between new people and people that have been around for a million years, and see the differences in how they bring Thelema into their life and how they approach it. And I don't know, there's just so much benefit to it. And I think that if this is if you I feel like, and I've been told by people that are like, I don't really get a lot out of it. You know what I mean? I don't really get a lot out of these classes you guys are doing, or I don't really get a lot out of interfacing with all the lower degrees all the time. You know what I mean? And it's not that they hate the lower degrees or anything like that. It's just they feel like they're not really fulfilled. Well, I hate to break it to you, but OTO is a path of service. And you, by virtue of being a higher degree, should be willing to come to things that don't necessarily teach you anything. There's not a lot for you to learn at a certain point, but the social and the support of the culture is important. And believe it or not, you do get something out of that. You don't have to always get something in an immediate sense, as in somebody's there who's smarter than you and is going to teach you something. I mean, connect with people. View you helping the newer people as getting something out of it, as giving back in the way that things were given to you. Because when I first started coming around, there were lots of higher degree members, and there was lots of this stuff going on. But it seems like as we move forward in time, these things tend to be forgotten about or taken for granted, and I also want to say that oftentimes the people giving the lectures are the ones who are more on the intellectual side of Thelema, okay? And I think that it's important for some of the newer people who have a better connection to what it's like to be a new person, to be doing some lectures. You do not, in classes, you do not have to be a hyper intellectual. And in fact, I would argue that as far as the stuff I talked about in the last video of keeping things basic, doing things for the new people, and speaking to them on their level, I would argue that a second or third degree who's only been around a few years is much more connected to the new person than someone like me who's been around 27 years. You know what I mean? It's been a long, long time since I was a new person. And although I have focused very heavily on interfacing with new people for years and years, so I'm pretty good at it, a lot of people have not had that focus. And when you and even more to the point, if you're not one of these hyper intellectual Thelemites, you are much less likely to go on tangents that confuse people because you're going off into too much of advanced material in a lecture or a class that's supposed to be focused on the basics. So I think that it's important to get people of a lower degree, people who have not been around as long, but still have a good knowledge base of Thelema for their particular stage of their development. I think it's important to get those people involved in doing some of these basics, these classes on the basics, beginner classes and stuff. You know, when I develop this series or class, it's going to be more or less an outline because the things inside of it are so basic that you should just be able to work from an outline. You know, we're going to talk about Aleister Crowley for 5 minutes, and then we're going to talk about the reception of the Book of the Law for 5 minutes, and so on and so forth. And everyone should be able to do a basic class like this. I mean, if they've been doing any kind of paying attention and they've been around a few years, they should easily be able to do it. So consider like trying to get the newer people involved in these basic lectures. It gives them a feeling that they have accomplished things and are accomplished enough to give a class, and it also allows the new people to be exposed to a beginner class from someone who probably doesn't even have the ability to go off on crazy tangents that are going to confuse them too much. So these are some more ideas. I apologize. I know I'm talking weird. I'm still getting used to these teeth. That's some more ideas to keep to do classes, lectures, events that keep both the left brain and the right brain people happy, that keep them all engaged, that keep upper level members and new members engaged, and a little bit about my thoughts on the culture, okay? And how, you know, the culture is very important, guys. It's very important to cultivate an environment where new people can interface with other new people and people that have been around for a few years and people that have been around for 20 years. They need to see this. They need to see the history, see that this is something that's been going on for a long time and is something that they can be a part of and that can last a lifetime and that they can see benefit from. So just consider those thoughts, and I hope they're helpful. And thanks for watching once again. Love is the law. Love under will.